There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With even more exclusive content, with over 150 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.
In the world of audiophile grade audio, there's something to be said about non-compromising stuff. Engineers spend so much resource and time building the ultimate so that you can install this type of great gear into your customer's car. But what happens when we're talking about the lower end of the frequency, like subwoofers, and you're running out of space? Because let's be honest, some of these vehicles don't got a whole lot of space to work with. Well, can there be a great solution that is both audiophile grade and solutions-based? Well, find out more. You're going to have to stay tuned because we're talking about Audiomobile today. This is CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM, Audiomobile, and it starts now. What's going on, everybody? And thanks for tuning in to another episode of CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and on this Monday, we embark on yet another full week of audiophile discussion here at the Audiophile Sessions on CMA Networks. And today, we've kind of landed on a brand that is very niche. And I say niche not because they're so, what's the word I'm looking for? So discreet and so only known to those that know about them. No, niche because they only make one product or one segment of product, and that is high-end subwoofer drivers. Now, audiophile grade, we're going to find out. Solutions-based, 100%. To embark on this journey, I'm going to call on my co-captain today from the north. Might be a little cold where he is, but well, it doesn't matter because he is the 12-volt Viking. Jaron Jalmalan from Importel, come on in.
How's it going, Ben? Yeah, us Vikings are used to the cold, I guess.
That's what I figured. I can just see you with your Viking hat and beard and just wiring those remote starts in the cold. I mean, I just have the whole visual. You know what I mean?
It's quite the visual.
It is quite the visual. Jaron, we're talking about a very specific product today, and it's a product that is adored by many because, again, it's solutions-based. You're going to hear that term a lot throughout today's discussion. But is it audiophile grade? And we're going to kind of discuss that today. I guess the question is it too good to be true? Is it possible that we have a product on our hands that is both audiophile grade and solutions based?
We certainly have that product for you, so it isn't too good to be true. It seems like it is, but we have that product for you, and we have a full lineup of products for you in the subwoofer category for your solutions and that high-end audiophile build. Audiophile can be a very generic term for sure, but in part of the audiophile, we can't forget that lower spectrum at the bottom line. Like the go-to seems to be speakers, definitely your mids and tweeters up front, but we can't forget those low frequencies and those musics as well. And I'm sure you can attest to that, Ben. I think that's probably the number one thing that's lacking in most new vehicles now. The audio systems are getting better, but it just doesn't have that low-end punch that you need, right?
Well, I'm going to comment in two ways on that statement. Number one, I don't think any of us got into car audio for the high frequencies. Let's just be honest. We all got into car audio because we wanted some thump in the trunk. So let's just start with that. That's number one. But number two, so much time, effort, resources, development, technology is spent on, front staging, off-axis performance in the higher frequencies, active three-ways and DSP and all that. But let's be honest, you could do all that perfect. If you got no thump, Do you know, it's definitely going to be missing something. Now, one thing I won't comment on before I like to do a little bit of research before we get into these sessions. And I did notice, you know, there are certain vehicles where I find these Audiomobile products kind of prevalent in, you know, and I think it has a direct correlation to space restrictions in certain environments. The first obvious one will be exotic vehicles. Like, let's be honest, a lot of these exotic cars don't have a lot of space to play with. In fact, most shops would probably say, yeah, you're getting a 6.5-inch driver in the door. That's pretty much what you got to play with. And the other one is pickup trucks. Now, obviously, where you live, Alberta, pickup trucks are kind of important, but they don't offer a ton of space, especially in those crew configurations or the double cabs. And obviously, a lot can be said about that. So what's your take on that? Is that kind of where the traction for these type of products has really shown itself?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a huge traction and focus in this market. And they certainly can be used anywhere. I'm a fan of saving trunk space. So even if you do have it, you still got a use for it. I still go pick up groceries in my car. I still do everything else. But to the point you said about exotics, 100%. You don't have much space in these exotic cars. You got to come up with creative solutions. And this is go hand in hand with creative solutions. As an installer, you got to find some place for some boom, whether it be in the glove box of a Lamborghini we've done before, and behind the seats where there isn't much space, you don't got much depth. This is where these products come in, and not even just to be able to fit a product in there, have them perform and perform above your expectations. I think that's what really puts us towards the audiophile grade on this. We were having a conversation before, Ben. I'll throw this conversation back to you. And Dad gets a new vehicle, probably a pickup truck. He's in Alberta. Everyone needs at least one in their household, I feel like. And he was a thumper back in the day, wanted some good bass, right? And he's expecting, well, it's a pickup truck, we need room. Okay, well, I wanted 212s, right? But let's settle for 110.
Well, let's be honest. Out of the gate, when you're thinking 212s, you're thinking, even if you did a sealed enclosure, call it a 1.5 per. You're now talking about 3 cubic. Dude, where are you finding 3 cubic feet? In a pickup truck.
You're not finding 3 cubic feet, unless it's on fold up the seat and put it in the back, and then you have nowhere for the kids to go, right?
And I think this is what segues great. I know there's we have Matt Overpeck, which is trying to make the time, I believe, in the back studio to come in remotely to kind of add some obviously expertise to the dialogue. But these are drivers engineered to perform in, I mean, almost like you got to take a double take on these specs sometimes, really small enclosures.
Yes, really tiny enclosures, and you'll see what we could make happen. Maybe we'll come back to that question later after the presentation and see what we could make happen for that customer that wanted 212s but got a pickup truck.
All right, let's keep it. We'll pin that. We'll pin that conversation. Okay. Fair enough. Let's see if we can get him in here. So where I want to go, let's see. We got Matt Overpeck, who is the Vice President of Sales for Audiomobile. Let's see if I can get him in today. Matt, you there?
Yeah, that was going.
Oh, you made it. Good. I'm happy. I know you're remote, but we want to take the time to say thank you. We appreciate that you made the effort to be with us today.
Good to be joining you both.
So as you can hear, we're obviously pretty excited about learning all about Audiomobile. I guess the first thing out of the gate is there's a new product to talk about, isn't there?
Actually, we've, after sort of building out the truck box, low profile exotic solution for the last 10 years, the past week we started shipping our first really high power product, which seems appropriate. It is somewhat of a unicorn product because it is exaggeration, the first low profile 1,000-watt RMS offered, available in a 12 and a 15 diameter voice coil. And to the discussion about, airspace. You typically have about 2 cubic feet or something. We specifically designed the HD series because they'll handle up to 4,000 watts peak power. Allow high power 12s to go under the seat of truck box platforms, or excuse me, systems, and to allow the 15s, which are also go into trunk applications in other vehicles. Because
For sure.
somebody buys a vehicle, there's a certain amount of utility built into that. You buy a car with a trunk to put stuff there, or SUV, et cetera, et cetera.
So very exciting. We're going to be talking about new product. Why don't you give us a breakout of what we want to be covering today as far as the presentation goes?
So we'll, as a shipping 3 new products, the new next gen Elite 32 started shipping late summer, and the new Encore 12 and 15 SKUs started shipping in the last 10 days to rave reviews, as will often happen when you introduce something that nobody's. And then we will follow up with the rest of the traditional S, Evo, M car, which is our but still high power series that is kind of and a brand that people adore.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So let's get to it. Some new product to cover, all types of applications. If everything we're talking about so far is interesting to you and you've been looking for a solution to blow your customers away with limited space, this is the show you need to pay attention to. It's not complicated. There's not a million SKUs, but it's been really well thought out. So with that said, let's go ahead and bring up your presentation, Jaron, and we'll kind of lean on you to kind of lead us through it. And I'll let you and Matt take it away.
Thanks, Ben. So we're definitely here to discuss Audiomobile and Importel. And Matt can certainly help us out with his vast product knowledge here. So what we want to start off with is the new big bang that we kind of were talking about. So the Encore series subwoofers, beautiful looking woofers. And Matt, if you can give us a lowdown on some of the specs on these woofers for the dealers. I know you touched on them already, but some of those specs and technologies that we can expect from these woofers.
Sure. It is not the most technically advanced subwoofer in car audio history. I know that's a big, as you can see, visually stunning. And there's a number of and then a number of things that are truly advanced you can't see because they're inside the motor. As you corner, the first thing that jumps out at you, that's an all diamond cut motor, supports a 3-inch long excursion voice coil. This is the first driver we've produced that has any sort of rear large axial vent, which requires an inch behind the subwoofer, which effectively makes the enclosure deeper because you have to vent the motor. We actually an expired JBL Pro Sound patent as used in their successful and famous Pro Sound subs. And the reason it's super cool is instead of the one vent, you have 3 vents directly over the voice coil, which is the only way convection cooling over the coil. Having a pole vent through the middle, like having air intakes on the front of your car that go to your gas cap, the brakes. Large 190 millimeter. You can kind of see just below the magnet. There's also our patent pending iCold compound aluminum radiator. It's a true intro supplied with fresh air on a horizontal vent. Cool provides vertical or north-south venting in a shorting rings built into the product. Here's some of the key features and benefits, not the least of which is the cast aluminum frame, real deal carbon fiber dust cap, which is an unit as opposed to just a cosmetic piece. It's also a cone. So the soft parts as a structure is pretty much state of the art. And when it's the most thoroughly researched and developed and tested on the Klippel test, which is part of our suite of R&D for 8 hours. And when we took it off the stand, it was just warm. Testimony to how well all of our technologies work together to deliver tons of power to, and yet it sounds super. Has a 19 millimeter one-way linear X-Max, which is on a low profile driver. It even exceeds our vaunted Evo by about, so that's pretty substantial.
So this is available in the 12 that you see, and also there is the 15-inch version. So kind of differences beside Matt, obviously, the X-Max, are they equal for the 12 or 15, or do you get more at X-Max out of the 15?
Yes, the specs are remarkably from the free air resonance. The mounting depth on the 15 is comparable to many 10-inch woofers. It has a OBAS of about 60 to 65 liters. That's more consistent with high performance 12. The Encore 12 is, and it has a VAS of about 40 liters, which again, consistent with what you, not only from a mounting depth, but also from the airspace requirements. You would normally put a 12, and you can put the Encore 12, or you can put a 10. Folks, is a game-changing type of development for small form factor applications.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely going to be a huge launch, and the power to size ratio of your enclosure is going to be, I think, probably one of the hottest selling features for this sub. So we want to move down. That's new excitingness that Matt says is shipping right away, or shipping now into the US. Canada, we should hopefully see it pretty soon here. So we want to step in the lineup to kind of the bread and butter that Importel sells for Audiomobile subs, and the Evo series. So this was the previous high-end series that we had, and now the Encore is going to take over that seat. But the Evo series, which is awesome product, low profile sub to fit in most enclosures, and the real, as Matt puts it, the game changer on this one is the size of enclosure, and that's what we really wanted to highlight here. The sizes for enclosures. So there's 4 different subs in this series. Your Evo 2412, 2410 in dual 4 configuration and single 4, and then also the Evo 24 8-inch driver, which you look at the enclosure size for a 12-inch 0.65 minimum sealed enclosure, like those are just tiny boxes for a 12. And, you go down all the way to the Evo 8, which is 0.25, that you're a quarter of a cubic foot. Like you could fit that almost anywhere, I feel like, in most applications. Is there anything that you want to add, Matt, as far as size of box enclosure and how these fit, or any technologies?
In developing loudspeakers, there's always fundamental trade-offs that have to be made to ensure that our core criteria for low profile. So the Evo 10s are 99 inches deep. Obviously, these have a solid rear pole venting through a unusual sort of serpentine cooling channels that are cut through the frame and around the integral, but held within the frame, sort of hybrid design, because rather traditional subwoofers have the motor below or behind the frame. There are other excursion subwoofers that have the motor entirely within the frame. Our solution, which, as I said, is a hybrid, where the frame, so that only the magnet and the T-yoke are outside of the frame. Criteria for full format performance, as witnessed by the fact that these valves will deliver 16 plus millimeters of one. That's best of breed, and in fact, the newest production, which month we've actually updated the power ratings on these. So the Evo 10 Forward will be rated at 600 watts RMS, up from their previous 500, because they proved over the last 6+ years we've been shipping them.
So yeah, definitely one of the things I want to kind of touch on that you spoke about was the radial venting, or the venting not venting out the rear of a subwoofer like a lot are traditionally. So what that allows you to do essentially is mount that subwoofer almost to the rear of a box, or sitting on the rear of a box. So yes, some subs may be super shallow out there, but you still need some airspace underneath the sub for it to move, where the Audiomobile subs you can stick right against the back. So it helps in the enclosure size or enclosure dimensions, and that's where they definitely help out fitting those high-end builds, because you are able to sandwich that woofer directly onto the back, so limited mounting depth even more. And then we want to, here's kind of the cutaway of the aluminum frames that integrated cooling, which eliminates the need for that rear axle motor pole vent, and goes to that rear design and the low profile. So something that we want to talk about, Matt can certainly speak so much more on, but a definitely very unique product, I feel, to the car audio market. And this kind of stems from home applications, that your cone area can be limited, but you're still wanting that audiophile output, and we'll touch on that audiophile. That we know that a bass out of a 10 doesn't sound like the bass out of a 15 or an 18. So what if you have a smaller enclosure size needed, or certain dimensions that you need to fit within, and you can't fit a 15-inch woofer just sheerly based on the size? So that's where the M-Car passive radiators come in. And Matt can certainly touch on the technology that is within the passive radiators that make it a solution-based piece for these audiophile builds to get that deep, low frequency bass. Matt, you want to touch on that a bit for us?
As we discussed, it's you're not planning 3 cubic feet of airspace. The limit is about 2 cubic feet under the seat of an F-150. The genesis, if you will, of the M-Car technology, acoustic radiators, was that we wanted to be able to tens under the seat of a truck and cut that airspace dramatically. So because the M-Cars are pre-tuned, meaning you don't have to mess with, they're pre-tuned in a 0.6 cubic foot box at between 30, considered sort of the sound quality sweet spot for a vented ported type of enclosure. And the beauty of the M-Cars is because it's only 2.5 inches deep. If you use one of those and come a GTS or a GT2 driver, the total airspace for the pair of given one being the M-Car is only 0.6 cubic feet. If you double that up, you can do 2 sets in a book and side-by-side type of enclosure and end up with efficient low profile box. It's only about 1.1 to 1.2 cubic feet from the typical half cubic foot for active 10s, downfire the drivers, which helps loading better in a truck. Testament, we've been shipping those for about 5 years now, traction, because if you can't fit a 15 or an 18 in a truck, you can fit the same piston area and therefore effectively the same subwoofer. But as we discussed, not putting
no, you certainly aren't putting an 18 in the back of a pickup truck unless you have no seat back there. So this graph, I think, is a huge representation and visual representation of the SPL versus frequency of the two woofers. So we have alone an Evo 2410 in a 0.5 sealed enclosure. So you can see where the peak frequency is of that enclosure. And then to add the M-car to it, so increasing the, like Matt said, the cone of what is outputting of the woofer, and 0.1 of an enclosure increase. So a tiny amount of increase on that enclosure, and your SPL output is drastically increased, and also the lower end frequencies are increased. So that lower end bass is increased. So that's the type of output that you're getting from a vented or bandpass enclosure out of a sealed enclosure, which is just huge, I think, for the audiophile market. And to really get that deep low end bass can certainly be the audiophile output bass that you're looking for out of a much smaller enclosure. And like Matt said, specifically to fit under rear seats of trucks. Like that's kind of how they were designed to. The most you can get out of the rear of a truck is usually about 2 cubic feet. So this application works perfectly back there and gives you that mass amounts of. So then we want to talk about our. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Final point on in lab. So obviously in vehicle with the transfer function, the will be increased, but that graph validates it. It's a 10 dB, the single Evo versus the Evo with the M car. That's turning from a sealed box to a ported box. So the M cars are incredibly efficient, and yet they offer no downside or compromise in terms of the box getting dramatically bigger. So it's changing kind of solution, especially if you want to do 410s in your truck.
Yeah, certainly. And then kind of our, again, down the line, bread and butter subwoofers is the GTS series. This is probably our best selling series of woofers from Audiomobile, packed full of the great technology that is part of the Evo line as well. Just not quite as shallow as the Evo series. It 4.5-inch depth on it, so still fits in many truck enclosures. Form factor sub. So custom tool fab rack, 6-spoke design. So it goes back to Matt's technologies that really make his subwoofers what they are, and such a great woofer that cooling and the vents to reduce heat, because we all know subwoofers produce heat. Those voice coils work hard. We're putting a bunch of power for them. So the most effective way that you can reduce heat in there, the longevity of the woofer is going to be certainly so much more and be able to output more. So, and back to the size things, that they vent out the side, so all these subs can be mounted right against the back of a box there, and they're not using a rear vented pole piece. Really helps increase the output of the sub and decrease the depth that you need for the sub. Matt, is there any technologies in GTS that you want to touch on quickly?
Yeah, so the GTS is like a larger magnet version, or flipping that, the Evo is a more evolved, lower profile version of GTS. They both share a which is a flux reduction module, and that basically pull and lower the inductance. As you touched on regarding there's two ways to cool anything: conduction, which is either water. All of our drivers weigh significantly more than comparable. Just put bigger motors and more steel in. And the second way, of course, is convection, which is air cooling. But while the air cooling, it's a far less effective way to get heat out of the motor. The GTS has basically the full Evo. It's just slightly deeper, and it will play slightly lower. We've had people put these in as little as 0.33 cubic foot, which is a 10-inch driver without compromising the low frequency extension.
Yeah, so definitely a go-to subwoofer for most small application enclosures. If you're limited on space, Audiomobile is where you should be looking for these enclosures. So these are kind of some of the builds that have been done using Audiomobile woofers that we kind of discussed. Matt said go-to on a lot of these is 2 woofers, 2 passive radiators, essentially having the 4 sub set up within your truck, and really getting that output out of that box, and it's still fitting under the seat and looking great. It's an area of the truck that, depending on the person, isn't overly used, so great space-saving compromise. And then we also have a diagram here of some of the, even into the SUV market, and this is a higher end SUV. It looks like a Range Rover or something, but just not taking up a massive amount of trunk space, so giving that low profile at the back of the trunk, and really form factor execution on that, and game changer technology is one of Matt's favorite sayings for sure. Anything to add on that, Matt, before we wrap it up here and call Ben back?
Well, as we discussed, all of our drones are referred to as low profile or slimline, and the reason we do that is, the available space in vehicles is not growing. Whether you're talking about electric vehicles, where they have to find places for the batteries, most customers are willing to give up a half cubic foot up to a couple. Is all tailor-made, designed to address those. The saying goes, people don't buy features, they buy benefits and solutions. And it's how Audiophile engineered, no holds bar is. If it won't fit into your vehicle, or it compromises too much of your, doesn't really do you any good. So we're laser focused on delivering that is super form factor friendly, and that sounds absolutely amazing. Anything about audio, ask anyone who's familiar with Audiomobile, the first thing, they'll sound better than anything else, and that's because we use more expensive parts, larger voice coils, and final thought is now a 1 kilowatt monoblock world, and we just live in it.
Yeah, certainly. It's not, Audiomobile doesn't make the cheap over-the-counter sub. They make a sub that is going to output It's going to fit in a small enclosure, and it's also going to be very musical. There is music down in that spectrum that some people forget about, but I'm a huge fan of having some bass to your system, and I think Audiomobile fits that bill very, very well. If we call Ben back and let's see if he's come up with any good questions for us. And
seriously, see if I came up with any good questions.
You never have good questions, man.
You know I'm paying attention to everything you say. So yes, of course I have questions for you. First of all, congratulations, Matt, on the new launch of the new product. They look fantastic. You mentioned real deal carbon fiber dust cap. I mean, the design cues are there. The red stitching, the contrast between the gloss dust cap and carbon and the matte dry cone. I mean, this is all little things that I noticed, and I'm not the only one. Those that are into that detail and that level of component is certainly going to appreciate. So I want to tip my hat to that design cue. Now, here's my question. Yes, we understand it doesn't take a lot of volume, to meet the spec for these drivers to perform. My question is, are these considered shallow subs? Because that certainly is a category that has come up in recent years where it feels like literally every driver manufacturer brand has been marketing these shallow subs. And their purpose of the marketing of the shallow sub, I put this in quotations, is that it takes up less space. I'd like to hear what Matt has to say about that comment or the question.
So good question. Terminology obviously can get confusing. I would say the line to refer to our drivers that are really, really svelte profile, as in low profile, higher performance tires. The vast majority of subwoofers out there they are thin or shallow or whatever. None of those are exactly sort of endearment. And at the end of the day, subwoofers need to produce the bottom octave 80 with authority. That's where the drama in music is. The market, they have designed them to be as shallow as they can be and settle for whatever kind of linear X-Max or power handling they can get. The inverted approach to that, we said people pay for what kind of SPL, low frequency, and so we designed these to be full format performance woofers, engineering solutions to be able to allow them to work in various and adopt the motor and frames so that they prerequisite enclosures, particularly truck boxes. It's one of our drivers, it's fair to say, ascribed to what's referred to as an isobaric driver that performs if it's the same as if it's two drivers in a thing, which cuts the airspace requirement, basically, or the VAS. So our drivers are perhaps slightly deeper than the slimmest ones on the market. Ones that are slimmer require larger boxes, won't take as much power, or don't.
So that is exactly what I was trying to get to the bottom. I'm going to pass it over to you, Jaron. I'm a dealer. I'm trying to understand what my options are. I've been presented with the situation. I've set up the guy's front stage. Power is good. I've got great amps. Everything's audiophile grade. It's top notch. Now we're talking about the bass, right? So shallow sub versus Audiomobile solution. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
So you could almost, like, shallow sub is a very generic term, but I almost see it as like a second option, right? Like, well, we can't fit a normal sub, right?
Now, why is that? Are we talking? Is it because they don't have the volume, or is it because they don't have the depth, or is it both?
I certainly think it's both. it's like you could be sold a woofer, and the woofer is this depth, and then it seems to increase depth as you increase the RMS for the sub. So shallow, I feel like, is the second option. It's like your go-to. Well, I can't fit a normal sub, so let's go shallow sub. Whereas Audiomobile is essentially all built to be shallow and be small enclosures. And like Matt touched on, that some of these shallow subs, yes, this way they're better, but this way they're not, because
Exactly.
they still need a big enclosure. So you're trading off one for the other. You're trading off that X max out of a woofer to get a shorter box, but still a wider box. Whereas an Audiomobile sub, I think, is best of both. It's shallow and needs a small enclosure.
I will add to that. I love the fact that there is no venting hole off the back of the basket. Therefore, you could snug up that driver right to the back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
whereby some of these shallow subs do have that venting. Therefore, even though the chassis with the magnet may be a shallow depth, you still have to accommodate for the space behind the back of the woofer. There you go. So on the back of that, just point to it. There's no hole there. All the venting is
nothing.
outside.
So this could be snugged right up against.
So there's your depth.
The
there's your depth of your box, really, if you think about it, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was something that I was really thinking about. You know, as a dealer, it's confusing, but more confusing is if you don't have the right options there to communicate to your customer, right? So this
Yes.
definitely where it comes into play. And then there's the thing about the passive radiators, which I, for one, feel it's very interesting. From a space, you showed a graph earlier whereby adding the passive radiator increased performance, right? As far as output.
Yes.
What is the at a glance kind of calculation of how much more volume do I need to account for if I choose to add, let's say, a 1-to-1? Let's say I'm adding a 10 powered and then adding a 10-inch passive. Like, how much more? Is there a percent? What is the formula there? I guess that's a Matt question. Let's go to Matt for that one.
Yeah, appropriate question, and it's a bit of a because dealers are used to, well, the woofer needs X amount of airspace, and everybody, the applications, and I think they tend to believe that like a ported box, because of its output, then you have to factor in the port driver. And the cool thing is with the M cars, you literally don't add the radiator. In the case of the response graph, that went from a 0.5 cubic foot to a 0.6 cubic foot, that set the tuning about 35 hertz. The cool thing is if you didn't increase, it would have raised the tuning a couple of hertz. It's pretty intuitive, right? Smaller box, lower.
So what you're saying, Matt, is literally what you need as far as volume to accommodate the passive radiator is whatever space it takes to add the passive radiator?
I would say, as a rule of thumb, probably 10 to 15 to 0.6. But you don't have to do that. You can make up volume by simply adding some fiber fill, because again, it is still a sealed system. And that's a little bit mind-blowing for people, because they're saying, wait, it's going to play like I'm turning a 10-inch into a 13-inch, and the box doesn't have to get any bigger.
If you see my ears clicking, that's exactly what's going through my head right now as you say that.
Yeah, but that's why passive radiator technology has become such a go application, because if you want to get huge bass, but you've got to deal with, you're not putting a refrigerator-sized subwoofer in, my living room, sort of an ultimate solution. And obviously, in vehicles, you don't have the luxury of giant enclosures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, my final question, I guess, again, is from a dealer perspective. You've presented basically 3 series of subwoofers, if I'm not mistaken, plus a passive radiator, correct? Yes. So, based on that, Jaron, like would I best kind of understand how to qualify my customer based on the series? Like, what is the main takeaways as far as where I should look to, which series I should look at?
Well, you can definitely look to kind of wattage output levels of the subs. So the Encore series, like Matt said, is kind of a slim series that can handle up to 1,000 watt RMS. So you're looking at a ton of output. Your Evo series steps down a little bit. So I have one right here that we can show quickly.
Mm-hmm. You see, for me, that the Encore series looks awesome, but it seems like it's along the lines of a more high output kind of style. You know, I see that stitched cone and the everything about it seems is screaming power. This one, however, if you don't mind, just put that up for a second more, Jared. That one there, this looks very refined and slick. Like it feels like this is a little bit more on the sound quality side, just from appearances. I'm not talking about tonal specs.
Yeah, even spec wise, if you're looking for really that SPL output, you're going to go to the Encore series. Your Evo series is going to be your very musical series, the shallowest of the subs, so that very tight enclosures on it to be paired with the passive radiators. And then the GTS series is kind of, you're still a very small mounting depth on that, but is your bread and butter audiophile subwoofer. So
which one is actually from a price point, the entry point?
The entry point is going to be GTS.
GTS is the entry point. Got it. So my follow-up question is, do the passive radiators match with any one of the three series? Obviously, it looks and very similar to the middle series, the Evo. But can you also pair it with the entry and the high output?
Yeah, GTS, like function-wise, I'm going to see if I can hold both of these up. They're substantial woofers, but the M car would pair with either of these. You look at the front of those woofers, very, very identical.
Okay, now turn
the
them.
Difference is coming in the back.
That's why I can never tell in an install if it's whatever's a passive or which series. They look the same.
Yes. So that really puts to some thought behind it, because then you're able to pair it with the GTS series, or you're able to pair it with the Evo series. So, and then mounting depth on the passive radiator is
it's that minus the magnet, right? Basically,
it's that minus the magnet, or even less. Like it's you don't have to worry about mounting depth on that. You're worried about mounting depth on the woofer. So it can really, you can get that output out of it, and then adding that M car is like just flipping a switch.
Yeah, it's
honestly
awesome. It's very, very innovative
for those low frequencies.
Yeah,
like you're all of a sudden adding a ported box with a 10-inch hole that you put in, or an 8-inch hole.
All right. Listen, Matt, I know you're remote. I want to take the opportunity to say thank you for coming in and sharing your wisdom with us. Any final word that you'd like to summarize with before we let you go?
Well, yeah, just to clarify. So we're actually shipping 5 series of subwoofers. Our sort of standard bearer, and what was the entry level in years we introduced the GT2 series, or our 2000s. So it cosmetically also matches. We like to think of it as sort of a GTS is a Corvette V8, same exact DNA, just a little bit less, little shallower, and it was by design that the M car, all 3 of those series, excuse me, as well Elite 3210, which started shipping a couple of months ago. I mention that because our solution is to pair that with an M car, which then again would convert the Elite 10 and Elite 8 that will ship next spring, and covers the whole price range, and everything goes from 400 to 1,000 watts, which handling on average subwoofer series, or so. That's a pretty remarkable accomplishment for all of them being low profile solutions.
Okay. On that note, Mr. Overpeck, thank you so much for coming in today. And we certainly look forward to hear more results as dealers start getting receiving some of these new products. And yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Can't wait to see how it sounds. Let's bring Jaron back real quick to close off this conversation. Jaron, at the end of the day, it's a solution. I think we rounded out the conversation, but at the same time, you know what, audiophile grade. What is your last message to dealers?
Well, before our last message, can we pull a pin out? Did we forget the pin? For the dad with two 12s.
Let's go back to the pin with the dad with the 212s. Yes, okay, let's go back there.
And was going to settle for 110. So, Ben, what did you learn? What can we put under the seat of this truck?
Yeah, first of all, the guy who wanted 212s might be able to get away with like a single active 12 with 2 passive radiators. Like he might even be able to get 3 drivers in that same space that he wouldn't even have been able to put 2 with a traditional sub. So solution solved. That's where it is right there.
Solution solved. And he's going to have he's going to have the output that he's looking for out of his small little box. And
you know one thing I didn't ask is what does it take a strain on the power consumption? Like, do you need more power to run the sub if you're adding, like, how does that calculation work with a passive radiator?
The sub is still the same, and the power going to the sub is still the same. What you're modifying is the cone area that's moving, because the passive radiator isn't hooked to the amplifier. It just sitting there moving as a cone. So it's your output power is still the same, but you're getting more output from it. You're using that power better, more effective.
Passive radiators, I'm kind of a fan, to be honest with you. All right. Yes,
it's definitely a solution, and it's a very cool solution. Once you've heard it, it's really next level stuff. It comes from that home market, but I think it works really well in cars.
I've got a note here. The Audiomobile website is currently under construction, but in the meantime, they've been working very hard to keep you guys updated. Just go ahead and get to the Facebook page for Audiomobile for the latest updates. And if you happen to be a Canadian dealer, you're like, give me some of that Audiomobile. Get a hold of Jaron and his crew at Importel. Importel.com is where a dealer would inquire. Jaron, thank you so much.
We have the Audiomobile subs on our website. If you guys want to look at specs and manuals on them, we have them up on our website. There is a link to them, so you can go through the manual and look at what you could build with his stuff. And if you get a chance to hear it or try it out, if you have that niche customer, like Ben said, that you need this application for, give it a try and you won't be disappointed.
Or just find an excuse to jam more gear into a small space. Like, that's the other side of it. It's fun, right? That's what I would do.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Jaron.
Thanks, Ben.
See you in the next one. All right. If you like this audiophile geeky talk, I want you to keep it locked here on CMA Networks, because all month is Audiophile month. Yes, it's the Audiophile session straight through to November 10th. We're covering every high-end brand imaginable. One every day. Tune in at 12 p.m. Eastern. Now, we also got this incredible contest going on called the Ultimate Fab Experience Giveaway. We are giving away 2 trips, one to an American and one to a Canadian resident, to MasterTech Expo 2023. Very simple. Head over to cmanetworks.com/giveaway and sign up for free today. And while you're there, of course, check out all the other great videos I've done with Jaron, with Importel, and with Audiomobile. CMAnetworks.com is where the 12-volt industry connects. That's it for this CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.
Roll it down.
I am.
You don't need a car to listen to Sirius XM. You can listen anywhere. You know that, right?
What?
Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio.
Kevin, you could use your phone.
What? What?
Alexa, play Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio on Sirius XM.
What?
This is how I know you're getting old. I guess that was it.
What?